Hi, everyone. This is the ParaPodcast, and thanks for tuning in. We have another episode that we're dropping, and we are happy to have you watch us. Today, we have a special guest. Apart from the special guest that I'm going to introduce now, we have the usual culprits, Thulani Sibanda, who is in the Middle East in Qatar. And we have Elias. Elias is in New Zealand. And we also have our special guest today. We know him as an ECP. He's going to tell us who he is. He's going to introduce himself and give us the final details about his career. His name is Nathan Conradie. Others will call him Nate. Hi, everyone. Hi, everyone, and thanks for tuning in. So let us start. So we'll just do as usual. We'll ask Nathan questions, and then he's going to respond, and the other guys are going to join in there. Right. So how are you, Nathan? How are you going?
I'm good, thank you very much. You know, when you record at home, just as we started recording, little kitten wants to
Yes.
come and wants to come and now sits on my lap. You know,
And it's a
just
black
as
one.
and
It's a
yeah,
black one.
exactly. We've got two. We picked them up from the side of the road here, but it's always as you start when something important, then they want to come and sit on you. But yeah, thank you very much, and thank you for having me on. I appreciate it.
Yeah. All right, Nathan. I met you as a clinician. Yeah, clinician. We were working in the ICU ambulance in Joburg. I think it was still early days of your career. But just to encourage a person that just might have a background like yours or may be interested in understanding how does one get into industry or what made you become a paramedic?
That's an interesting question. So I actually started out, I finished school and I started studying at Wits and I was doing molecular biology and just not kind of like had 2 years into it and I just really wasn't enjoying it. There wasn't just enough action or I don't know. I don't know what it was, but it wasn't for me. And then from there, a friend of mine, really good friend of mine, he was studying at UJ doing this paramedic or ECP thing, and I looked at him and I thought, this is a really cool thing to do. Did a bit of research into it, and then so then started studying and went from there. So that's really my journey into it, and then from there, how the career progresses and what you end up actually doing compared to what you study might not be something that you
Yeah.
always expect.
Yeah. So you did your grade 12, year 12, you finished and then you applied for molecular biology and then you said, nah, this thing is not doing it. And then you changed your mind, you went to UJ, you applied there and they took you. And then how did you find university?
Yeah, I think I had quite a stark contrast from when I was studying at Wits. For the international audience, it's University of Witwatersrand. We had really, I mean, in the BSc, we had, I think, something like 2 or 3 thousand students in our class, in our first year class.
Yo.
Because you have those core subjects that everyone takes, like chemistry and a biology course, and then you specialize into you specialize into your major later on. So if you take biochem, you might have, only 100 students or something like that. I can't remember the exact numbers, but yeah. So I started there, and we had, much different student lifestyle. We'd meet a whole bunch of people on the lawns, and our classes were huge. If we weren't at the lectures, then no one really noticed or no one really cared. You had to kind of find your own way. And then going from there to UJ, which was just completely different. We had a class of, I think we started with 35 or 45 or something like that. That whittled down to about 20 in the end. And just a totally, totally different experience. And I think also the challenge of studying to be a paramedic and the real dedication that it takes to get through the course. I mean, you got the challenges of having to work in the evenings. You had to work outside of when everyone else is working and the studying and everything like that. So I think a real totally different contrast. I think you can't get two more different types of programs. But from that journey, I definitely learned a lot from when I was studying before. And I think I was a little bit maybe more mature, but a little bit more prepared by the time I started, which was in one way a blessing. I enjoyed that. But then also that contrast was also quite difficult to handle. So I think it's a difficult course. I mean, I think studying to be a paramedic, it's difficult and everyone's going to have their challenges.
Yeah.
Yeah, how did you do your funding for your studies? Did someone fund it or did you fund it yourself?
My parents paid for my studies, yeah.
So you
I was
still
one
owe
of
them,
those.
You still have to pay back.
I pay back in love, that's what I get.
I wish I can pay NF stars in love.
I was one of those fortunate people that, and it's not the case for everyone. There's some people that get loans, and I mean, yeah. So I was very fortunate that my parents paid for everything.
Yeah, and I think you don't really feel the weight because even for me, I didn't pay a single cent, and I never had to pay back anyone. And then you hear people still paying loans back, and you're like, what? But yeah,
Who paid for you, Elias?
it's the road accident fund.
Wow.
They paid even accommodation. They paid. I think there was even like an allowance or something like that. Because the country didn't have paramedics then, and as compared to other places. So,
Yes.
I think,
So, yeah, to everyone who doesn't know, Elias is from Namibia.
yeah.
Yeah.
So Nate, so it's. I think you've mentioned some of the things that and I'm sorry to be blunt about this, that as Black students, one of the things that we usually struggle with is finances. But before, I want to ask you a question, and just to give you a background, in one of the episodes, Malusi shared his challenges when he was a student, when he was studying. But also, I kind of like share the same sentiments of my struggles because I also, when I was a student, I struggled with eating properly and I was also failing. And Dagmar Malba called me. And when you go to that office, you're like, what did I do? But when she asked me some of the questions, then we got to figure out that I was struggling with nutrition and study techniques, but she helped me a lot. What I want to ask you, other than finances, because you said finances was not an issue, but what are some of the challenges that you struggled with as a student?
Yeah, so I think just my personal journey, I went from studying a BSc to, studying, having this like really challenging course. I think that was quite difficult. Definitely struggled in my first year because I know when you look back, you think that it's silly, but at that age, you are, just outside of school. I thought I was taking a real step back. All of my friends were in their third year of study by the time I started my first year. Felt like I was really taking a step back. And obviously you've just started your career. Your friends are now moving on. Maybe they are in third year. They are getting jobs and doing things and moving on with their lives, and you starting with your studying. So I think that was a real challenge that I had in my first year. But I think, looking back, I can say that I used that experience that I had come from, and I think it made me a better student, even though at the beginning, I mean, I also struggled at the first year. I remember it was touch and go whether I was going to pass anatomy or not.
Anatomy.
Everyone struggles with anatomy and physiology.
It was like, there was that one test that we did. It was practical test where we had all of the cadavers there, all the cut up bits. And that was like a 30%er, and I ended up getting just 90% for that. And if I didn't, because I just put down, I said, I'm not failing now. And I put my head down and I studied. And I guess that's one of the challenges. And then I ended up, I passed it now. It was fun. I didn't even scrape through with anatomy, but I mean, it's like, those are the kind of things. I always liked, when I was studying, I always preferred physiology, just in terms of it's this kind of system. It was, that's kind of the way that my brain works in kind of a logical way. Like one thing goes to the next. Whereas with anatomy, it's just pure study. You've just got to put in the hours and you just got to learn all the things that you need to. So yeah, I think those were the challenges that I had. And then just in general, studying to be a paramedic, both the mental load of it as well as the studying, and all of these things are coming at you and they're all new. You're waking up early to go do training. You are sitting in a classroom when you're tired, which I hadn't before. You're working night shifts. You're working outside of your studying. So I think all that whole combination and working through that is quite difficult. So that's definitely a challenge that I experienced.
Yeah, no, I agree. So I think for the guys that don't know, because obviously me and you come from UJ,
Yeah.
I think those were some of the challenges that I also encountered, where you start with physical fitness in the morning, and then when you go and shower and class starts, you're really a bit tired, and then from there you attend class, and then once you're done, you go home. But it was good. It was good learning. It teaches you a lot of experiences, and also it shapes you as a practitioner, because you get discipline from that. There's a lot of lessons to be learned from that.
Yeah, look, I sort of enjoy the paradox of our backgrounds. Like if you listen to Elias and Nathan's story, they had it all sorted out in terms of finances. There was money that was coming in. And then on the other side, you have Thulani and myself, who had just basic problems, food,
Yeah.
yeah. And yet we are here now and we are functioning, we are adults, So it doesn't really matter where you come from, as long as you put in the effort. It's unfortunate that other people have to struggle, but also I'm sure that there would be people who will be placed in Nathan's position who would just struggle because it would be just tough, and they won't have the mental resilience to just make it. I think fundamentally that's the lesson that we can learn from this: that no matter where you come from, you can start and you can end up somewhere with what you do. And then, did you do a degree or you did the diploma? You did a degree, I think, Nathan.
Yeah, so when I started, it was a 4-year bachelor's. There was no
Yeah,
option to do the 3 years diploma before.
City.
yeah.
Yeah,
It's only us, the
the older
The
ones.
legends, the dinosaurs.
Speak for you.
It's okay.
I
And
still
then,
have my last class was where we had BTech. Ours was the last class. After that, it was the BMC. That was the tag. So
yeah.
I've still got claim to still being a BTech and not a BEMC.
Okay, it's nice when you can float both ways, because I can say I'm a BTech, and I'll be proud of it, And then if the degree people start acting funny, then I say I also have a master's.
Flex. That's a different kind of muscle.
Anyway, let's continue. In terms of integration now between after fourth year to working, how was that integration?
So I mean, I think that when you qualify as an ECP, I don't think you kind of have this idea that the market is open and there's so many jobs available and there's a need for it. And there really is a need for good quality ECPs. But actually nailing down that first job can be a little bit difficult. Initially, I was looking at going overseas after I qualified. And I just hung around and did some like locum work for a while. And then I was very fortunate that I stumbled across one of I think it was a district manager of Joburg. And we just got chatting
Was
at
it
one of the
Donald
events that I
Baloyi?
was doing. Yeah. He's really one
Legend.
of the person that I really respect. And he helped me a lot. So I chatted to him and he said, what are you doing? And I said, oh, no, I'm kind of thinking of going overseas. I'm thinking of, I'm working these locum shifts. And he said, no, come for an interview. And within, I think, a week or two, I'd got my interview and then I got hired at the province. So there was that. And then I was very fortunate to be posted at the university that I was at. So we were doing a project between UJ, provincial government, and Philips. And that allowed me to, where I'd always wanted my career to go is into education, into academia. That allowed me to go from the start. And it also allowed me to work on a critical care ambulance, which is something that I'd throughout my studies, you kind of look and see what part of the field that you want to go into. You can go into rescue, you can go into operations, you can go into management, you can go into academia, like what I wanted to. And you kind of see that path. And I always wanted to go the academia route. And I was very fortunate to get that first job that was already connected to that environment. Even though I wasn't working for the university, I was still there and I had exposure to the academic side. So that was kind of my progression from sort of graduating into the first job. And again, just fortunate that I was able to get that.
Yeah. Look, shout out to Donald Baloyi. He's a district manager. I'm not sure whether it's Egoruleni or I think it was Joburg or something.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've also sent a couple of people. I've sent a couple of people to him and he's assisted them. Very cool guy. Very, very gentle too. It may take time to respond to emails, but he's good. He's good like that. Anyway, also we do have an episode where we discuss career progression. Do check it out if you find what Nathan is talking about. And one of the things that made us to talk to Nathan, he's got a very interesting career. Now we are starting the interesting part where we are talking about, so he works in the ICU ambulance. He's lucky to get a gig that I think most people don't get, where he works UJ, Philips, and GPG. GPG is Gauteng Provincial Government, which is the provincial ambulance service in Gauteng Province, where Johannesburg is, Egoruleni, and Pretoria. So he gets to work there. He's situated in UJ University, which is pretty cool. So he's got a very unique gig there. And tell us what you do after that. You finish that gig and what happened. I think that's when I met you the second time when we were at Lebone. Am I correct?
Yes. Yeah, so I was working there and, I think the province was quite understaffed. I mean, if we were honest about it. And I think I ended up going into a lot of getting a lot of additional assignments added to me. So I was running the drug office. I took that on a QA committee. Yeah, you remember you had to come to me to get all your drugs.
Yeah.
So that's what I kind of taken on. And after about 2 years of that, it became quite a lot of additional things that I was doing on the side. Also going to meetings, managerial meetings, those kind of stuff. And then from there was an opening at the college. And again, that's just my kind of I was fortunate enough to have that opening at the college. And that was then went to work for Lebone for 3 years after that. And then that was also, again, it was a nice exposure we often had to do the kind of operational stuff, but we also had exposure to really how to start in academia, because when we started, we didn't even have accreditation for the courses that we were running. I had to learn about like curriculum design and how to create a course and the relationship with the regulators. And then from there, we moved on to, we had students and we got to teach. So that's kind of where I went from there.
So that Lebone doesn't kill us, it's important I highlight this. So we had the courses that we're running that were accredited, and then we're venturing to a new space where we were attached to a university called Sefako Mahato. So we then had to develop unit standards, attaching unit standards to learning material and stuff like that. We'll meet all the time trying to create the outcomes and all those things that are involved in program design and all that. It was a very fascinating experience there for me to see. I'm sliding myself there too. Yeah. All right. So, and then after Lebone, you then left. I left Lebone first. And I remember at the party there, you said, Malusi, whatever you do not support Australian rugby.
And I still stand by that.
I still don't, I can move towards New Zealand, but I am a South Africa Springbok through and through. Yeah. As you can see,
Elias, I'm sure he supports New Zealand since he's there.
Yeah.
Nah, guys. You cannot abandon your roots. I'm African. I'm African before anything else. So definitely I have to support the Springboks.
There we go.
Yeah, but yeah, for the local, I mean, I've not gone to watch a game yet, but yeah, I think that's the second team I support.
Yeah.
It's New Zealand.
I would watch rugby if South Africa is playing Australia. That's the only
Just so
condition.
that you have something to say at work tomorrow.
Yeah. I'm not gonna say it. Sometimes I get sick when South Africa is playing. I can't concentrate. They'll understand. So after you left. Where did you go after that? After
So
leaving
yeah,
Leboni?
so I started a master's. I started my master's degree when I
Yeah.
was working operationally, finished that at Lebone, and then from there I got offered a job at the university, a federal university here in the UAE, where I still am. And yeah, worked as a faculty for 4 years there as a managing campuses, got like a little bit of experience on the managerial side and worked as a faculty there teaching here at the university.
Yeah, pretty cool.
So, if you had to compare between working at the university in Abu Dhabi or in UAE and in South Africa, being at the university, being exposed to the University of Johannesburg, but also at Leboni, what would we say that the similarities and the differences in terms of student learning and how education is delivered to the students? And do you think that the students in the Middle East may be at a advantage or disadvantage compared to South African students?
Yeah, I think that it's totally different systems that the students come from. So the schooling system is completely different. Their experiences that they've had leading up to university is completely different. So I think it's quite difficult to compare, but we also worked at I was working at a federal university, and essentially the government pays for you to study here. Even going down to the motivations of the students, they have very different motivations. It's almost like seen here as just something that you do. You're going to go to school, you're going to go to university. Whereas in South Africa, we had students that really, if they wanted to be a paramedic, wanted to do it. And, you have students that were taking on massive loans in order to study. So their motivations were completely different, completely different. So I think that, I think it's difficult to compare that all the time. It's difficult to compare what the students that I had before. In terms of their motivation, South African students were much more motivated. I mean, when you apply for university at a federal institution here in the UAE, you get a bunch of options. So you might pick three options, and you might get the first one, or you might get the second or the third one, but you're going to get a place in the university. Essentially, if you've got the right amount of the right grades to get in, you can get in. So our students even sometimes didn't really know what they were studying. I mean, it was on the rare cases and those students didn't do well, but they didn't really necessarily understand what they were getting into, in terms of the fact that, okay, you're going to have to go and work night shifts, or you're going to go and have to do this extra thing outside. It's going to be a tough course. So I think that's totally different. But I think what you've got to do is try and make the best student and the best practitioner that you can get. You're going to the student's experience and what they're coming into the course, you can't change. But you've got to just hope that, or you've got to try and ensure that by the time they finish, that they're ready to go and treat patients and hopefully treat those patients well.
I think I like what you said, and just before I talk about it, is that there's this guy, he's called Elias Thomas. He also got into the paramedic course. He didn't know what he was getting himself into.
By mistake.
By mistake. But one of the things that you're mentioning, I think it's a valid point, and it's quite important that when we join the paramedic course, is that you have to be motivated. You have to be something that you love. Because if you're in it for the money, then you're in it for the wrong reasons. But the passion needs to be there, because you go to critical cases, you go to environments which are not safe, especially looking in South Africa right now with everything that is happening. It's not an easy job to do. It's emotionally, mentally, and physically demanding. So the motivation to willing to want to do this job is important.
Yeah. I was thinking there's a friend of mine, just a story. she asked me, why do people in South Africa always celebrate when they buy cars? What's the point? What is it about that? Like, why is it a big deal? Like, you bought a car, you bought a car. Sometimes the reason I'm saying that is because sometimes you're finishing the course is what separates your family from having the first graduate, first person that buys a car in the whole generation. Yeah. And so what pushes people sometimes is I need to get this, I have to get this because in order for my family to have bread on the table at the end of the day, I have to do that. So motivations are very different from country to country as compared to you going to uni because the government is paying for you. You're just going to finish it or you're not going to finish it. It doesn't really matter, but you're just doing it. So motivation is really different. Other people are really driven by the desire to succeed. Like, I just want to do this so that I could be something and contribute to the society by paying tax. Not that.
Let's not talk about tax, guys.
Or contributing to the society by being just a person that assists a certain population that needs our services. Pretty interesting. I am also aware, Nathan, that you've published a couple of papers. And what's your interest in terms of your publication and your research? Just overall summary. What's your interest in that space?
Yeah, I mean, I think research is what drives our profession forward. So I think that there will always be a need for new research, and especially within our field where we are quite far behind in terms of really good quality published research. And I think there's obviously a reason for that, because it is quite difficult to do research in the pre-hospital setting, as opposed to other fields of medicine. There's informed consent, there's all those kind of things that can make it difficult. We're working in that emergency environment. But obviously the interest is from the masters, published from the masters, and then I also work with a bunch of people that are interested in critical care retrieval and transportation, and that's something that I really focused on in my research, and trying to build up this industry of critical care retrieval movement, because it really is a field of medicine all by itself. Coming from that critical care background, it's different. A patient sitting in the hospital being ventilated and on an infusion, and now you take that patient out of that environment, you put them in a noisy ambulance with all the challenges that goes on with that. It's really a different field of medicine all by itself. So we've tried to kind of carve that out as sort of like a field on itself, and then just publish around there, mostly motivated around critical care.
Yeah. You sort of mentioned something about critical care retrieval. What is?
So it's part of what I've published, and it's about creating definitions around what is, when we speak about moving a patient from one facility to another, what are we actually speaking about? And there's quite a few terms. I mean, even now that I've been speaking, we have critical care retrieval, we have critical care transport. We also have different types of transports within what we would say between facility, interfacility transports. You might have what we defined as more of a primary type transport, where you have a patient that is having an emergency, essentially, going to a facility that is not able to treat them. This is the classic patient that arrives at a clinic with an MI. They're still in the emergency part of their treatment, you would say, but they're being moved now from one facility to another. So it's a kind of a difference to that, because it's more like emergency medicine. Or we have a patient where they've been sitting in the critical care unit for 3 weeks and they've been ventilated, and all the changes that happen within their lungs, and they've got 5 types of infusions, and their blood pressures just hemodynamically low. That patient is different to what you have in the emergency setting, and the pathologies that you see in a patient that's been sitting in ICU is completely different. So we try to define what are these things, and we're trying to bring definitions to what we're speaking about when we speak about critical care or retrieval or movements of patients.
We can talk about this the whole day. I can feel within myself that I'm getting more and more interested. I do miss that space, functioning in that space to transporting critical patients that are in need, that are intubated and stuff. So it's not about just sedating them, giving midazolam to keep them sleeping. It's about managing them too, the airway and how you should do it right. I'm also aware that now the space that you're functioning in is a bit different. You can tell us more about that, and I'm going to allow or let Elias to continue asking you questions that are detailed. I'm sure he's prepared hard questions for you around mental health.
No pressure, Elias.
Look, obviously, I think I just wanted to ask about the retrieval part. And I think it's just for one of our listeners that are out there that are probably watching this episode and kind of want to get into it. How can they get into it? And especially that you did it in the Middle East, do you sort of need to familiarize yourself with the environment first before you get into it? Or do you need further training? And perhaps just to give a little bit, maybe just like a little bit of a chat around that, if you can.
Yeah, sure. So I was in the Middle East. I was an academic, so I was working as a faculty. So I didn't do retrieval here. I think it depends on the service, and I think this is also what the industry or the field of critical care hasn't really properly developed. So you might have a service that will offer interfacility transports, but there's no standards around what type of ventilators you need to use, what type of equipment, what type of vehicles. I'm speaking both in South Africa and around, just in generally around the world. So I think there's definitely need for creating proper standards around what is a critical care and what is a critical care patient. As I said to you before, you've got those two types of transport. They're both interfacility, they're both between facilities, but how those are two completely different types of patients. So I think there's definitely a need for standards. And if you're looking to get into it, I think it depends what service you at. Does the service offer that kind of vehicle, that service that you got? But there's definitely a whole field of medicine that you can research and you can go into and speak to the people in that field and see how did they get into it. Because normally what happens is you work as a paramedic, and then after 2 or 3 years, you get placed on a critical care ambulance. That's kind of what you get, the normal progression, especially in the private services. Again, how do you get into a field or an area of your career that you want to go into? And I think that's something that you've got to look in your service.
So,
Okay.
And I know you mentioned something about critical care, and I know at some stage you were part of, I'm not sure if you're still part of the special interest group for critical care retrieval. And I think one of the main goals for the critical care retrieval was to define what critical care retrieval is. Do you mind telling us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so this is when I was working, like I think it was just a couple of years into working as a critical care paramedic. I created with the Emergency Care Society of South Africa a special interest group that focuses on this field of medicine, so the movement of patients. And from there, that's evolved. We have people together that work in research, that work in defining the standards, work in building up the industry of critical care. And I think that's what my involvement has been. And I obviously started it, but we also have other people that are contributing and doing things in that space.
Okay. Yeah. We know that you are running like a business now, Nathan. Perhaps let's, if you can just tell us about how did you go about, running this business? What is it like being a paramedic? Obviously, being a paramedic versus running a business is two different things. How's the experience for you, and How did you come about to, sort of like deciding that, no, you know what, I'm going to be a business person from, being a paramedic?
Yeah, so it's definitely something that I didn't envision for my career, but sometimes you've got to take the opportunities that you've been given, or you've got to just work on the ideas that you've got. So essentially what happened is I was working as a faculty, and exactly like we're going back to the different student populations, what I found is that my students just weren't as prepared as I wanted them to be by the time they were graduating. So I worked on a research project. We got a little bit of seed money for it, and it was just essentially how would we create the system if we wanted to. That was part of the research project. How would we create the system that would ensure that our students are better prepared? And then from there, this was about 2 years ago, I just worked on the research project. And, sometimes you have an idea and you just think that this is really great and you want to just pursue this. So I did that. Working from academia, we had really long holidays. So I think we had 6 weeks off. And I just put some time. I took 2 weeks off. My wife went on holiday. We had a relaxing time. Then I came back and I basically just had a month where I just worked almost non-stop on trying to figure out how to do this. If I was going to create a system and a company and put it all together, what would I need in order to achieve that? So, I started out with a business plan, which is, again, coming from a background as a clinician, as an academic, I had no idea about that. Put it to a business plan. I didn't even know what is included in a business plan, So just take step by step by step, and then if I wanted to create my app, which is basically one of the fundamental services that we offer at my company, how do I create that? Do I have to learn myself how to do app design, or can I pay someone? Going with all those steps. And then eventually, you get to the point where you've got a product, you've got something that you can put out there in the market, and you quit your job and you focus on it full time. So, that's kind of the journey that I've been through. As I said, not something that I thought I was ever going to do. I thought my career was going to be in academia. I thought my career was going to be in all the things that we've spoken about before. But sometimes you just you find something that you really enjoy and you're passionate about, and then I feel that you owe it to yourself to pursue it.
No, absolutely. I'm just trying to share a little bit of your business here so that you can run us through sort of the products that you offer. But while I'm doing that, can you just run us through the products that you offer? I do know that you have obviously, yeah, I'll let you do the talking, sort of like run us through what do you offer, how can we find it, and so forth.
Okay, so what we do is the business started with the app. So the app has two main functions. It has to do with tracking services. It's tracking skills. And then when your skill currency drops, so the skill tracking creates a skill currency score. And then that score, when it drops to a certain point, the app gives you an activity to do in order to upskill yourself, a bit of micro learning, and it allows you to test yourself to see if you know what you need to know. Again, going back to where it started, what I saw is within clinical governance systems is that a clinical governance system isn't necessarily tracking your skill currency all the time. So if you go to any manager of an EMS service and you ask them, when last did X employee do X skill? They won't know that. So that's part of what we do, is we track those skills and give you an understanding as an organization of your skill currency. And then with that information that you've got now, and we all know that the skills aren't performed at the same frequency. So you might do an IV line every day. you're good at doing an IV line, you're proficient, you know how to run it, you know the exact angle, where to put it in, you know how to get a vein, whether it's night or whether it's raining or whether it's hot, you can do it. But
Whether you're driving or whether you're stationary.
exactly, you know, with the needle going everywhere, the cannula going everywhere, you can find a vein. But, you know, you might do pacing on a patient every couple of months, or you might do a crike every couple of years, or maybe only a few times in a career. So how do you balance those two, you know, the frequency of the skills being performed with actually when the time comes, how are you able to perform that skill? And that's what the app does. It's about tracking the skills as well as providing an activity to upskill yourself. Now, what we do at the company, going back to the main services, we look at a services clinical governance structure, and we add complementary services in order to build up that clinical governance structure. So we offer the application. That's where we track the skills, and that's like on subscriptions. But then we also look at the broader clinical governance structure and say, okay, you're missing out on your policies. And this is where we've got a consulting arm of the business where we can create policies, we can help with creating a clinical governance structure. And then also we have a software development side where we say, you've got this clinical governance structure, how can we add a technology to improve that system? So that's essentially the three main services that we offer.
Yeah. At the moment, I'm thinking of a person who owns a company that is actually doing, let's say, mining in Liberia. They're sitting in an office maybe in the USA or Australia or in the UAE. They are running their company there. They have a group of paramedics that are working there, and they can't manage their skills. They don't know what's their proficiency in doing the skills. I think they can jump in the product, and then they can actually have an active view that monitors if the paramedics are actually doing the skill, or actually they are practicing or learning more about the skill. I think it's a good product. Am I correct if I put it like that, Nathan?
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. And I think that is the difference between all of the services. Some of the services, I mean, you can imagine for yourself, if you, like in the UK, they have a service with a clinical governance team of 100 employees. So their clinical governance structure is actually really well defined and actually, you know, best in the world, talking about all the services around. Then you might have organizations that are running a small ambulance service that have got 50 employees, that have got almost no clinical governance structure, you know, just because of the nature of their business. So what we try and do is we try and augment that clinical governance structure, create it and augment it, and give them a way that they can track their skills, they can ensure that their employees are up to date. And I think with the way that the world is going, there's more litigation, there's more malpractice claims, there's more negligence claims out there, and services are really need to protect themselves from that. So that's where we add our value, is to come in and say, this is what your system is, this is where we can get it to, and we build with our clients.
Yeah, I think just I have two more questions for you because we're kind of running out of time now. One is, you know, when you transition from being a paid employee to sort of like a self-employed person that runs a business, it's not as easy as people think might be, because your first paycheck might not even arrive maybe after like 6 months or sometimes even up to a year. So can you just share us through that process? Like what was the experience like for you? Did you immediately just, sort of like focus on the business, stop working completely, or did you sort of like try and work and, maybe do one or two, I don't know, jobs, gigs, and then try and focus on the business? How did you go about it?
Yeah, so I mean that is true. When you've transitioned from being an employee to your business owner, through my journey of being an entrepreneur, I have, learned all these sayings and all these things. And it's like, if you are trying to be a business owner entrepreneur, it's like you jump out of an aeroplane and try and assemble your parachute on the way down. That's what I think being
Do it.
being a business owner is. And so that's really what it is. And the thing about it is, and this is what I've tried to do in my career, is that if you want to do something, you've really got to pursue it. You can't do something half your time and expect to be better than someone who's doing it full time and is dedicating all their time, all their energy into that. So if you want to, if you think that there's something that is good enough to create a business or to change your career in a certain way, you've really got to pursue it with all your, with all your energy. So just going back to the transition, I went from faculty, then there was a development stage. And the thing about at the university is that I had to give a semester notice. So I had to resign, give my notice in January, but then I actually only leave in July. So I had a bit of time, to work.
Federal government.
I'm not sure how your colleagues looked at you like, are we allowed to share these things with him? Because it's leaving.
It's
I think that's a
secret.
difficulty because you have to be there for a semester. So you can't drop the university halfway through the semester. That's why they do it like that.
Makes sense though.
I think it's fair for the university.
Not
No,
for you.
but let's not be. Yes, because the thing is, I know when I left the University of Johannesburg, I had to work 3 months before I can actually leave. And when I think about it, the main people that are in that part is the students. So that transition when someone leaves needs to be smooth so that the students do not suffer. I mean, being in that position, you're already responsible for a lot. And imagine if you just leave within a month, who's going to fill in those gaps? Who's going to take over all the work that you do? So 6 months is a lot, but
yeah,
it's good.
Okay.
But also, I think what you've mentioned and the question that Elias asked, it provided you that smooth transition, where you're moving from being someone that is getting money at the end of the month, where towards your business, where you're going to be your own boss and getting your own paycheck from your business.
absolutely.
End of 4 months, you change your mind. No, I'm not living anymore.
You can rescind it. There was even a system on our website. Put in your notice and rescind your notice.
Yeah, I had a question, Nathan. In terms of your mental health, what do you do? Is there anything that you do that is just not work? Because it seems like you're grinding a lot. You're jumping off, moving aircraft, it's crazy. Do you do anything just to relax or to manage your mental health and stuff like that?
Like Malusi cycles all the time. That's what he does.
I think what I've learned throughout my journey, not only, this started quite a bit before my business, but you really need to focus on your mental health. You really need to actually actively treat yourself, and you need to have something, and this is what I think, have something outside of your career that is you enjoy and you pursue and you do. And I think that's what I focused on is, obviously I've got my friends and my family, but also I've got triathlons. So I spend a lot of my time focusing on that and putting a lot of my energy into that, So I wake up in the morning, do a cycle, and then I train in the afternoons when I come back from work. And that also just that mental clarity, getting outside of doing your work and responding to emails and doing all the things that you need to do. That time away from work when I do my training helps me a lot, come up with ideas, but also just get the mental space and do something and pursue something and have a goal that's outside of your career. I think that's very important.
Thinking it's hard to, you finish a cycle, even you can do 20 kilometers, and then you have to run after that. It's just something else. And then after that, you start with swimming first. Is that what you do? Start swimming, cycling, and then running. It's a bit crazy, I must say. It takes a lot of mental and physical resilience that is beyond measure, I think. Have you done the Ironman?
So no, I focus on smaller. I do the Olympic distance. It's a 10K run at the end, 40K cycle, and the swim is 1.5Ks. But I think what I like about triathlon is that there's the physical part of it where you have to be fit enough to do all of these things. But then there's also the skill that you have to be able to swim well. You have to be able to transition between the swim and the run. There's that mental preparation, all the things that you need to do. So it seems like, you just get out the water and you start cycling, but it's not like that. You actually have to have quite a bit of systems. And to do that quickly.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
From your experience, what made you to start doing triathlons? Is it UJ have an impact on it? And the reason why I'm asking, because we ran, it's like a mini triathlon or diathlon, whatever that is. English is not master duathlon. But we obviously ran, and then after running would go swimming. Did that build up an interest for you to be where you are now, where you start enjoying these races? Did some would have an influence on you to say, okay, no, let's try this. It might be fun. That you started enjoying
Bad influence.
So I've always been kind of just love sport, even spend my weekends watching sport. When I was in school, I ran track in school, and then played a lot of football and touched rugby, and I was always kind of active in the gym a lot. But also like what I found with the gym, and this was nice, what I transitioned away from university, because university is quite hectic and you've got to be up and studying takes a lot of your time and a lot of your energy. And even doing my master's, it took a lot of energy, outside of work in order to complete it. And then I got to the end there and I just thought, if you don't try and pursue something and have a goal that you want to achieve, you're just never going to get there, and you don't actively pursue it. So that's what I did. And I've always liked triathlon because I've liked, swimming, the cycling and the running, I've liked them. I've enjoyed doing them separately. So I just put that all together into one. So yeah, yes, obviously with the UJ, we did a lot of swimming. I enjoyed it then, but it was more something that is just sport has been part of my life, for a long time.
Yeah. All right. Look, Nathan, we really appreciate your time. If I'm thinking about it, you have been an ECP, work in the ICU ambulance. You've worked as a lecturer at a state ambulance service, and you have then went and become a lecturer for a university, general university, as you put it. And then now you're a businessman. This is a full cycle. I think it shows that you can do a whole lot of stuff. Maybe the part that you didn't touch much is management of an ambulance service. Maybe that's not your interest too, but it also talks to who you are and the things that you've done. We appreciate you and keep going. And we do hope that you are our friend as we continue this journey of podcasting. I hope this assists someone out there and we learn from it. And I do hope that people that are in the EMS business do attach to your business and click and look for Proficiency. I am aware that there is a LinkedIn page where you can find the company. You can find Nathan Conradie there. You can also find Proficiency, and you can also find Proficien on what is this thing on the apps. You look for the app, you log in. There is a free version, and then there's also a paid version. You'll find Mr. Conradie there. And at the end of it all, you also do triathlon. I think you're a very strong person. As much as you're soft spoken, but you have done a lot. And I have a feeling that you are going to do a lot. Thank you very much, everyone. We appreciate you. And
Thanks.
Cheers.